Good morning, everybody, and welcome to my farm. We are currently working on my 1917 farmhouse. We're trying to get heated floor lines installed in the basement, and then we have an outside concrete pad that we need to get poured for our kitchen and living room. So we are going to be working on those two things today. Hey, everybody, you're watching Cole the Corn Star. Over the last 3 days, we have gotten almost 4 inches of rain, so things have been pretty wet. It is now just starting to dry up enough in here. We currently have Ricardo and Jola. They are getting lime laid down, smoothed out to the correct elevation, as well as being packed down. We're trying to get this pad out here ready to get rough and plumbing in it. So while they're working on that, Roman and I are going to be working in the existing basement. We're going to be shaving off some of these high spots on the insulation, and then we're going to be getting heated floor lines laid down. And if we get all that stuff done, then we'll get some rebar thrown down in here. Then we'll be ready for concrete. Before we get too carried away in the basement, I am first going to get the laser set up for Ricardo and Jola. Okay. After getting the laser set, our entire floor here is about this far too low, so Jola and Ricardo definitely have their work cut out for them. After putting down about 4 wheelbarrows, we realized that this is going to take us all day, so we're going to be changing it up a little bit. And by a little bit, I mean we are going to be using the skid loader. We're going to build a ramp so that way we can get the skid loader inside of there, and then we're going to spread this lime around with that. Ricardo and Jola are pretty green when it comes to running the skid loader, so I don't want to put them in a tight situation like this. So Jola is going to be working over here with the hammer drill. He is going to be making some dowel holes for our rebar to be able to tie into these walls, and then Ricardo is going to be working in the basement with Roman. There's quite a few areas like this where our insulation's a little high, so Ricardo's going to be shaving those down. And then Roman is working over here on our supply and return lines for our manifolds. He's trying to get everything pushed up against the wall nice and tight and looking pretty. This lime down is super weird because this stuff's kind of like wet sand, and some spots are super packed like where I'm at, but then you go to other spots that are a little waterlogged underneath, and look at this. It's like I'm standing on a waterbed right now. You can watch it move against the concrete. Look at that. Look at that. Whee! It's like a trampoline. It's cool, but in all reality, it's not really cool because we can't pour concrete on top of that, so we're gonna have to wait for this to dry quite a bit. We're gonna try to pack it as much as we can, but it's probably gonna have to sit here for a few days just to be able to get the water out before we can really pack it and get rid of that sponginess. Ricardo, since we have Jola here, who's Marshallese, he's from the Marshall Islands.
That's right.
They speak a different language than us, right?
That's right.
So we're gonna have a little time of learning some Marshallese, okay? Yeah, how do you say good morning?
Chipong.
Chipon?
Chipong. Chipong.
Chipon?
Chipong.
Yeah, how do you say it in Spanish?
Buenos dias.
Roman, how do you say good morning in Ukrainian?
Доброго ранку. Доброе утро in Russian.
All right, Ricardo.
No, don't ask. Ukrainian is not for me.
This side is just about done. We just have this little corner here. It's a little high and it's a little bit low in front of me. Once we get it all smoothed out, then we'll pack it. And then down below, Ricardo and Roman have about 2/3 of the basement looking just like that. I'm trying not to get home at 10 o'clock tonight so that way I can see my family for a little bit. So I'm gonna call it a night. We'll be back in the morning.
12 hours later.
It has been a pretty busy morning so far. We are planning on pouring concrete tomorrow, so that means we need to finish putting in our radiant floor lines, we need to finish putting in our rebar, we need to get our rebar propped up off of the radiant floor lines, we need to figure out how much concrete we are going to be using, and then we also need to get a concrete pumper truck lined up. We cannot put any more of our radiant floor lines in until we get more of these staples. My cousin Kirk is supposed to be bringing those down in a little bit. He's waiting for his shipment truck to bring them in, and then once he gets those, he'll be bringing them down. So we cannot finish putting our radiant floor lines in this area until those come. So in the meantime, Roman and Jola have started to put down the rebar in this room. We have enough for this room, maybe enough for some of this room, but we don't have enough to finish everything else. So Ricardo just went into town. He is getting 2 more bundles of rebar, and then while he is there, he is also going to be getting some rebar spacers that are going to go underneath this rebar to lift it 2 inches off the top of the foam, which will get our rebar off the top of our radiant floor lines. The part we are working on yesterday is just going to kind of be a project. If someone doesn't have something to do down in the basement, they can work out here on getting something leveled out. But for today, we're not really going to be putting a lot of focus on that. I have also been on the phone a fair bit trying to figure out what kind of concrete pumper we want to use. We have 2 options. We can either do a big boom pumper that pumps it up in the air, or we can do a line pumper that pumps it on the ground, basically like this garden hose is laying, except the hose is like 4 inches around instead of one of these little ones. Compared to the boom pumper, the line pumper was $25 an hour cheaper, but the line pumper also has a lot more setup. So I think that $25 an hour difference is pretty much a wash. So we are going to be going with the boom pumper, but I now need to see if there's going to be an availability for tomorrow because it sounds like stuff's going to be pretty full. The boom pumper guy is supposed to call me back in a little bit. He said there may be a chance I can get squeezed into their schedule, but he needed to look. So while we are waiting for him, I'm going to jump down into the basement and I'm gonna measure the dimensions up on everything so that way I can calculate how much concrete we're gonna need. This is a picture that I drew of the basement. I ran around with a tape measure and I got a whole bunch of measurements. I ended up taking those measurements and then I calculated them into square feet. So the entire basement is 1,520 square feet. And then I also took these measurements, assuming a 6-inch thick floor, and I put them in a concrete calculator, and it said we need to have 28 yards. We also have to take into account when we are running a pumper that we are going to have to prime the boom, and that takes a little bit of extra concrete, so we actually need to order a little bit more. However, the 28 yards that I calculated had that extra already in there because when I did my measurements of the room, instead of measuring to the foam, which is where we are actually going to be pouring, I measured to the dimple board, so we gained 2 inches all the way around the room. And then we have spots like where we have this wall, and that entire area, I just measured all the way through. So I'm not subtracting the spots where we have the walls in the room, which would probably be a yard, yard and a half. So that gives us our little 10-15% extra to make sure that we have enough concrete. All right, boss man, what's the plan?
How are your staple skills?
Well, considering that this is one staple that we have and this is the other staple that we have, probably not very good.
That was Ricardo. So you better do better. You better do better. That's another slogan for politician campaign.
We actually have a few staples left on our stapler, so we're gonna get these thrown down and try to get just a little bit more pipe down. And hopefully our new staple should be here soon, and Ricardo should also about be here with the rest of the rebar. once we get our staples, we'll put our last loop in, and then we will be done putting in the heated floor lines. This pipe that we are using for the heated floors are kind of cool. It's got a bunch of writing on it, and at the end of the writing, it has a measurement. And so when we cut the ends of our pieces, this is one loop, we can look at the one measurement and then subtract the other one, and then it tells us exactly how many feet are on our loop. And since these are going to be heating the floor by having hot water circulate through them, we want to try to make the loops about the same size, because if one loop is 150 feet long and another loop is 300 feet long, the one that's 150 feet long is going to have warmer water running through it, because it's not going to cool as much in 150 feet as the 300-foot one. So we could have weird pockets in the floor where one area is a little bit warmer than another, but if we keep all the loops about the same size, it should mean we have even heat throughout the entire floor. Ricardo just arrived. He brought our rebar. He got 300 sticks. We're probably going to be using about 100 of them for the basement, and then we'll use the other 200 over there. And then he also got some bricks for us to set the rebar on top of. These are just regular concrete bricks. They're not like the red kind of bricks. These are just concrete. But now that we're thinking about it a little bit, we might do something different, and we might be sending these back. All right, Ramen, you ready?
Yes, I've been born ready.
We are running into a problem. We have the heated radiant floor lines down. Those look awesome. We have a really good chunk of rebar down. We have concrete ordered. However, we do not have a pumper truck. I called the pumping company this morning, and they said they were going to get a hold of me if they had an availability for tomorrow, but I have not heard anything, and they close in 10 minutes. I could try calling another pumping company, but it's supposed to be 91 degrees tomorrow, and it's 89 degrees today, and everybody is covered in sweat. So 91 tomorrow plus concrete down there, it's going to be an absolute sauna. So we are going to be postponing the concrete pour to a cooler day. I am currently standing in the area that will eventually be the top seating spot for the underground movie theater. And when we were backfilling this area and packing it down, we got a pretty substantial amount of rain during that time. And since this is right off the side of the house, we got even more rain down here. So this spot is a bit saturated underneath, or it was. It did dry for about a week before we put the spray foam insulation down, but it was wet down there. So we are kind of concerned with some maybe eventual settling over time. So for this outside area, we're going to be doing things just a little bit differently than the inside. If you've ever been in a building or a parking garage or something that has a concrete floor and a concrete ceiling, that means they came in some time ago, they poured concrete, and then they took away their forms, and then the concrete was able to suspend itself without having fill underneath. We're going to be making something kind of like that out here of sorts. This pad is not going to be a load-bearing pad, so it's just basically going to be people on it and a couple small walls. Other than that, nothing heavy. So what we are going to be doing to make our suspended pad is we're going to take a drill bit and we're going to drill into the wall every time we have one of these pieces of rebar, which is every 12 inches. And then so once we get our concrete poured and everything sets up, the concrete pad should basically be able to hold itself up simply from having the rebar inside of the walls. So the walls will be holding things up, so that way if we get settlement underneath the pad, we don't have to worry about anything because the wall is holding up the load. So this is probably definitely a belt and suspenders approach, and I don't even know if it's the correct way of doing it or not, but it makes sense in my mind. So that's what we're gonna do. What do you think?
I'm not thinking right now. I'm so tired, I'm not thinking.
With those holes being drilled, that wraps up our work in the basement for today. We're now going to work on something else. I'm going to try to run the packer on this lime area again. We have some spots that are a little bit wet. I'm hoping if we just keep running the packer on them, we'll push the lime down, we'll push the water up, and we'll get this to settle, and we'll get this to dry up. But before we start doing this, I need to start filling some totes with water. Over the last 30 days, we have gotten almost 20 inches of rain, which is about half of our annual yearly rainfall. So things are super wet, and every single one of our fields is pretty much completely saturated. Is completely saturated? Are completely saturated? Grammar police, I need your help. Anyway, it is wet out in the fields. Too wet for us to be out in them. Our crops are also now in the stage where they are starting to put on fruit. So they have ears, and when they are in this stage, they care about making this as big and as heavy as possible, and the rest of the plant kind of gets put on the back burner. So that means we are susceptible to diseases. I'm talking diseases like gray leaf spot, northern leaf blight, anthracnose top dieback, tar spot. Ooh, yeah, we don't want tar spot. Rust, southern rust. Even though we don't live in the south, we still sometimes get it. When it comes to these diseases, there's not really a lot that we can do to stop them, but there are things that we can do to slow them down. We can put on fungicides. Now, normally we would use our sprayer to put on fungicide, but this year with it being so wet, we're not able to get into the field because we will get stuck. So we can only put on things through an aerial application. Now, normally people would use a crop duster. So if you see a plane flying over field spraying something on, there's probably a fungicide. But to be completely honest, I don't really trust crop dusters. I don't think that they cover the whole field, at least on the crop dusters I've seen around here and watched. They usually miss like a quarter of the field, and I don't want that. So we have one other option, which is to use a drone. Since I am fortunate enough to have a friend that has a drone, I asked him if he would do our fields. He actually just got done doing our corn today, but in the morning, he's going to get started with our soybeans. So in order for him to get started with our soybeans, I need to get some product together for him, and I also need to get a bunch of water mixed together for him as well. Whenever we are making a fungicide, the first thing we need to do is we need to make sure that our water is right. More specifically, we need to make sure our water is acidic because fungicides do not perform very well in an alkaline environment. It kills them in a really quick amount of time, so we're gonna be putting some acid in our water. To lower our pH, we are going to be using this muriatic acid. This is super nasty stuff, so we need to be really careful, but this is what they use to lower pH in the pools and spas. So if you've been swimming, you're probably swimming in some of this. This 1 gallon jug will treat 1,000 gallons of water, so we're just gonna be putting in a little bit. More specifically, we are going to be putting in 2 water bottles worth. This stuff is super nasty, so I would not recommend dealing with it, but check this out. If you spill a little bit, it makes kind of a cool reaction on the rocks. Be very careful. Ooh, look at that. Yeah. Muriatic acid, ladies and gentlemen, AKA the acid that's in your stomach. Yeah. That's how you digest your food. One of these totes is going to make us an 80-acre batch, so we are going to need 230 gallons. Now, these totes are a little bit interesting because they don't read in gallons, or actually they do, but it's behind this cover, and I can't read it, so we have to go off the liter side. So we need 870 liters, which is basically just right above this line. We are running out of daylight quickly. I thought I was going to have enough time to run the packer while these were filling up, but I do also need to get 30 gallons of product put together for all the fungicide, the plant growth regulator, all the stuff that we are going to be putting on the crops. And I'm feeling by the time it gets dark, I'm going to have all those things put together, and these tanks are just going to be getting full, so probably not gonna have time to run the packer tonight, unfortunately. I was actually looking forward to that. 870 liters done! 870 to go. We need 17 gallons of that one. I got everything mixed up, it's all ready. Looking at the horizon, it looks like a thunderstorm may be rolling in, so I'm just gonna shut the doors just in case. All right, this is all I got for today. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you in the next one.